Okay. Okay, so welcome everybody to our third in the series and the last one for this series that we're doing of webinars on some topics that we thought were relevant to all of our SME businesses like they are to us. The current one I think is very topical at the moment. There's lots of HR things going on. We have I know Anna for a very long time. I know how knowledgeable she is. So we're very privileged to have her here today and share her expertise on getting the performance process right and minimising our risk of unfair dismissal claims, which is always in the back of your head. I think when you're an SME, I commented to Anna earlier that big corporates get this wrong and they have whole HR departments. For those of us in SME land where we don't have that, we need people like Anna to help us along that process. Anna loves helping SMEs, and I hear from her what I hear from other people, which is you can make a real impact in this area because you don't have that HR specialist sitting in the office with you. So over to Anna. If you've got any questions, there's the little chat function at the bottom if you want to put them in there, or alternatively wait to the end. We'll have about 10 minutes available for Q&A. So without further ado, and I see lots of people popping on now, over to you, Anna.
Yeah, thanks, Nerida. And I'm really excited to talk about this because this is one of my passion subjects. Is if I can just help small businesses or medium-sized businesses that don't have HR function get this stuff right, they don't need me as often, and that's what I love. But what I thought, how I approach this time is a little different to maybe how you might think, and that is I'm going to take you through a bit of a process from start to finish. And I'm going to start at the very beginning of the journey of an employee, because I think that if we can get things right at the very start, then it actually, along the way, we get further and further away from having problems. And so it starts really at knowing what your business needs. And I say that in, whether you've got one employee, whether you're employing your first person or you're employing your 10th person or your 30th person, if you know who you're employing and why you're employing them, that can be half the battle. So when you're advertising for a role, you're selling what you need and you're attracting the right people to that role from the outset. And one of the things I sort of wrote down on my notes I definitely wanted to say to you today was around hiring people that understand the values of the business is actually where it probably starts. Because you've got someone coming into an interview and starting a business that's aligned, then all of a sudden your conversations are a little different. And performance from the outset really starts from being aligned. So I think if you can really get that right up front and sit down and think about who you're hiring and why you're hiring. Skills, we can tick boxes, but behaviours and attitudes, as we know, sometimes we can't change those. And one of the things I've noticed throughout my experience is it's the attitude when things go pear-shaped, it's the attitude at the end of the process that ends us up in fair work. So if we can hire for attitude, that's awesome. So the next step is then your job advert, which I was just talking about before, and that's really where you've got to start setting the expectations on what the role needs to be. And you want someone to come into an interview having an understanding about that, and that's where that job advert can really help. And then the next step, I know how quickly we've got to go today, so forgive me if I'm talking a bit fast. I've got lots to tell you. The next step is really around your position description. If you're sitting down at the start of a process and going, we need to fill this role, then one of the first things you're going to be doing is looking at your position description and detailing out what the role looks like, what are the responsibilities and all that kind of stuff. Now, if you talk to some lawyers, and I've talked to a few over the years, they'll say, put it all in there, get it all in there, lots and lots of detail. I'm kind of in between. I sort of think, well, we need a little bit of wriggle room in a position description, and an employment contract can help. So if we haven't got employment contracts, then we probably need to think about that. But when you're looking at your position description, being able to detail out the big chunks of the responsibilities and putting that in front of someone before they come into the business, and really being clear on what the expectations are around those, so some really good KPI measures on the position description, then all of a sudden you've set the tone, you've set the scene. One of the other things that I really believe is important to put on a position description is your values, or your behavioural things. So at Business Depot, we have all our values listed, and we actually have some KPI measures on there that shows people how they can achieve those values on a day-to-day basis. And we introduce the values into the business at all sort of aspects along the way. So a position description at the very outset of someone's employment, with an employment contract talking about policies and procedures and the way you do things and all that kind of stuff, those two together are going to really set you up for success in that expectation from the outset. I will preface this by saying, with leaders and managers in businesses, the buck stops with us. And if we don't get that right, then we only have ourselves to blame along the way, unfortunately. There's a few other bits and pieces, but generally it's up to us to set the scene from the outset. So the next step in the process would be to interview someone. So you've got a job description, you've set your values potentially, hopefully you've got an employment contract, you've got a position description. So this person's walking in to the interview, probably getting the position description there in the interview, or they might have got it in advance. Always good to have it there. They're coming in to figure out whether or not it's a good fit. Now, I don't know about any of you as business owners, but how many people go into an interview? Sometimes I see it with our guys too, where they talk about the business, which is awesome. They ask some questions, but they never set the expectations of the role, or they don't go through the role in enough detail so the person can really get a good feel whether or not they're the right fit. As I said, skill set ticking boxes is really good. So lots of behavioural questions in interviews can really help with setting the tone around what you think this person's going to be like in your business and whether or not they're going to be a good fit. And I can't reiterate more, I'll probably say it a few more times in the next 10, 15 minutes, is getting that cultural fit right supersedes a lot of things. So asking the right questions in interviews, and I'm happy to share some of the questions in an email later too that I ask, but very much open-ended questions, demonstration questions, all that kind of stuff can give you a really good feel as to whether they're going to be the right fit. They come in right fit, position description clear, expectations clear, then you're off to a good start, and you're likely to not have too many initial issues in most cases. Once you get into the induction process, that's actually something that I think a lot of people get wrong. So have you ever been in a job over the years where you've just started on day one, you've been shown around, you know where the toilets are, you've been shown the exits, off you go, get into your job, here's a computer system, this is how it works, leap in. Now, some of us are okay with that because of the type of personalities we are, we can probably figure it out, but most people are going to need a bit more than that. And to set someone up for success in their role, you're going to need to do some induction process or onboarding process with them. And I would suggest you break this down into steps and stages. So you've got your first day, you've got your first week, you've got your first month, and what is reasonable for those people to understand and pick up on in that period. Just want to touch on probation periods just for a second. So most businesses that I look at from an employment contract perspective, and I tend to use lawyers with employment contracts, but when I look at them for the first time, I see sometimes different probation periods. Sometimes it's 3 months, which is a bit historical, and then I'm seeing more and more 6 months. Now, I think where that's coming from is that in the Fair Work side of things, there's some rules around unfair dismissal, and these are, if you're a company with 15 or more employees, you have 6 months before an employee, and I'm going to say this in a really bad way, you're going to terminate an employee within a 6-month period because they're not the right fit, probation, so to speak. Technically, they shouldn't really be able to make a claim. I'm going to talk a little bit about that. If you're a small business under 15 employees, you've got longer, you've got 12 months, and you follow a small business code. And I really encourage you to find the small business dismissal code and have a read through that. And you've got longer to get it right. So when it comes to probation and employment contracts, employers are picking up on that and going, well, if we've got 6 months, we're going to put 6 months in. But if we set it aside, it's actually something quite different. How long does it take someone when they start it with an employer to really give you good impression and them get good impression that the role is right for them and that they're going to be right for the role. And that probably does take between 3 to 6 months. So having a 6-month probation period in your contract really works well. At the 3-month mark for a new employee, performance, we're talking about performance management here and getting it right. This is a really crucial time, because if you've had a few months in an induction process, they're learning the systems, they're learning the process, they're understanding the culture, they're starting to do things, they're starting to get things right and maybe get things wrong. The 3-month mark's quite a good time to check in with them and their colleagues and get some feedback. So sitting down with them, if you don't do anything really formal up to the 3-month mark, then that's a good time to actually do something more formal, get some feedback from the team, have a really good conversation and raise any learning issues. And there's some great questions you can ask around this that are not confronting, that are really good to get, draw out how they're going. And you can also give them feedback as well on how you think they're going. And remember, sometimes perception is different to the reality. So everyone's got a different view on the world. What really good question to ask your team is, are they where you expected them to be in their skills at this point in time? Someone's coming in, I'll use an example that I'm used to, which is accountant. You hire an accountant in a business, you expect them to have, and you've ticked boxes and they said they could do this, this, and this, and this. You expect them to have probably demonstrated that within a few months. And so the people around them can give you some more feedback if you're not close to it, to say, no, so they're exactly where I expected them to be, or actually, no, they're undercooked, actually don't have the experience or don't know the answers to the questions I expected them to have. And that's really great feedback to understand where you're going to go with their performance. It doesn't necessarily mean you'd call it quits at that point, but it just means you might rejig how you're going to go forward and whether or not the expectations have been really clear to them of what they need to be able to achieve. So the induction process at the 3-month mark's really great check-in. If you're getting to that point with a new employee and you're not really happy, this is when we're going to start having some different conversations. And this is where a few really key things we need to get right. And that is it behaviour based or is it skills based? And you handle them a bit differently. In the IR world, it is actually much easier to terminate based on skills. It's not so easy to terminate based on behaviours. And a lot more work goes into that, unless it's misconduct, right? Unless it's really serious stuff. It's a bit of a harder slog. So if you can recruit for values and behaviours, then you're already ahead of the curve. So skills, it's really easy to deal with in relation to performance, because you can actually go, well, you're not demonstrating the skills you said you could do. We're not sure if this is going to work out. Let's test you here. Let's give you some time. Let's test you here. But you can usually get through that really easily. But just make note that when you start to have sort of behaviour issues really early on, we kind of want to nip it in the bud. And we can have a chat about that if you have got some of those issues in your teams. So I had a mental blank then. So if you're getting to the point where you're going to let this person go in probation, you can't get away anymore with just saying they're not going to work out based on cultural fit or they've been unsuccessful in their probation. You can, but one of the things to understand about the way the employment and industrial relations works is that it protects the employee. And so the fair work, all they want to do is keep people in jobs. And so you've really got to give fair and reasonable information and give feedback in a certain way. So for example, you might go skill set. These are some of the things that just didn't work out. Just a little bit more detail than just you're not right. Now, one of the things I've seen in my experience is if you're having really good conversations through that probation period and the person's a good cultural fit, but it's just not going to work out and you can't redeploy them or you can't change their role, usually you can have some really good conversations and they do self-select. So to find something that's better suited. And I've actually seen that with long-term employees as well. So if you've got some really good communication and you're really having good, valuable conversations along the way, you will find a lot of people will read writing on the wall, I suppose, is the thing to say, and maybe not stick around anyway if they're not working out or the performance isn't up to scratch. If at this stage you haven't made it clear on expectations, you're going to get yourself into a pickle. So even at 6-month mark, someone can come back and say, well, you didn't tell me that that's what I was meant to do. My position description is not clear to me. You never sat down with me. You never explained to me. And you don't want someone walking away feeling like that, even if it doesn't end up in any kind of difficulty, because I mean, that's not good for your business or good for them either. So getting these steps in place up front is really does benefit everybody. So you've got a current employee. Let's change it up a little bit. And you've noticed a drop in performance. I'm not sure what everybody does at this point, but what I've noticed with many employers who call me and say, I've got a performance issue, I will ask, how long has that performance issue been going on? And they'll say 6 months. And when was the last time, or 12 months, when was the last time you checked in with your employee? Oh, it's been a while. So one of the things I cannot stress enough is regular check-ins with employees on performance. Now, depending on the role, depending on the level of management this person needs, it will vary. So rule of thumb for me is don't go longer than 3 months without a conversation, especially if you've set expectations, start of a financial year, we're coming up to that, and you're setting goals for that person, you're setting KPIs and measures. If you go longer than 3 months, especially if there's maybe monetary measures too that they've got to achieve and they're not hitting it, and you wait for 4, 5, 6 months, it's very hard to claw back. It's very hard to make right. It's very hard to have that conversation. But if you're having it gets harder, sorry. You're having regular conversations every few months with your employees on some simple little things, then you're likely to pick up on some performance issues and be able to hopefully nip it in the bud with asking questions like, what's changed for you in the last few months? You've been going okay, but now you're not. Is there something happening that's, personally that's affecting your work or your concentration? We should be checking on health and wellness all the time these days. What's changed in your role? Have you been given new responsibilities and then you're not quite been trained well on them? All these sort of things can be asked. What's working well? What's not working well? Regularly to pick up on things. What sort of training do you need in the next few months to help you get to that KPI you've missed? What do we need to do? How can I, big one for employers, big one for Fair Work. How have you supported the employee to achieve that? So we need to show and demonstrate how we've helped them. We can't just dictate, you've got to do this and off you go. Fend for yourself. There's got to be a support sort of wrapped around that. Discussions sooner rather than later. I sort of mentioned that. Casual meetings are really good. We don't need to overly formalize all these meetings. Like, we can just observe something going on and go, hey, let's go grab a coffee. I've noticed that, you snapped at such and such there. You don't normally do that. Or if someone's doing it a lot, then make it a bit more of a formal process. And I'll sort of take you through some of that as well. If you, after some sort of regular discussions, you're checking in with someone regularly, performance isn't improving, then we do need to start a bit more of a formal process. How are we going for time, Nerida? Are we doing all right?
Yeah, you could probably talk for another up to 5 minutes and then we'll open it up. Okay.
So much in this. I'm trying to go as fast as I can, but I don't want people to miss out on stuff. So one of the things you should be able to sit down and do with someone at any point in time in their employment is, we've set really clear expectations for you. Do you not understand what you're meant to be doing? If we've done all these things up front, then we should be able to say that, should be able to have that conversation with anyone. And actually, most people who, great cultural fit will go, I'm not meeting my expectations. I know I'm not meeting my expectations. But often we hear things like, I didn't even know. Oh, how come no one told me? So we want to get out of that because we want them to go, I realise, and now what are we going to do about it? So you can have lots of casual conversations about that. But we're going to get a bit more formal now. And one of the things I will say really quickly, and I'm happy to answer questions on specifics, but document. So if you've got an employee, you're sitting down with them, you're having a formal conversation and you're saying things like, look, mate, we've tried all these different things. We're not getting there. I need to give you, it doesn't have to be a warning, and we can talk about warnings very briefly. I really need to put you on notice that this may not work out. So we're going to put you through a performance improvement process. We're going to provide you with more training. We're going to put structure around it. We're going to put a reasonable time frame around it. And again, this is where skills is easier than behaviours. Behaviour is stop doing that. I've picked you up on this a few times. Please don't do that in the office. That is not part of our values. It's not part of our expectations. If you do that again, we will be giving you a formal warning. That's strong behaviours can go down that path, especially if you've pulled them up a few times on it. And with skills, though, there is just a chance that they're not going to get there. And so if you're having that regular contact with them and you're actually documenting and you're emailing that documentation to them. So it's all well and good to have file notes, but the employee needs to get it. So when you're writing your email around, we've discussed this, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. These are the things we've agreed. This is what we need you to do, and this is the time frame we need you to do it. It's all got to be written that can go straight to the employee so they understand the expectation. One of the things that Fair Work asks all the time, or always ask when if you get into a pickle with a conciliation is, did you tell the employee, were the expectations clear? Were they given instructions? Or did you have a meeting with them? Did you allow a support person if they asked for one? Always ask them if they want one. If it starts to get down to the tricky end, they'll ask sort of all of those different conversations. They'll ask all those things and what's been happening. If you say you've done none of that, then that's not going to look good for you as an employer. And the other thing I suppose to remember too about this is if you go down this path with someone that's actually got a good egg but just is in the wrong role, again, remember they might self-select and you might be able to have a conversation where you help them exit. So I've had that a number of times, and walking out the door, shaking someone's hand and saying, thanks for everything and here's a new role, good luck with your new role. That's what we want, right? And in small business, I suppose we can control that a little bit more because we're the leaders of the business. Take notes. I'm going to stop talking. Keep on file everything that you do with an employee and make sure that you're communicating really well. It's probably my big takeaways. Again, Fair Work just want us to keep people employed. So we do need to be up to speed with the processes around performance and where we can terminate and where we can't terminate fairly, where we're not allowed to terminate unfairly. So that's where they really come into play. That was super, super quick. I could talk for hours. Has anyone got any questions?
There's none in the chat room, but if anyone wants to unmute themselves and ask a question, go for it.
I have a question.
Go for it.
Go for it.
With probation, extending probation, what are the implications of that? Does that increase certain potential issues if you do that? Yeah,
look, I'm not a big believer of extending probation. I mean, I think if you know at around about the 3 or 4 month mark, if you had some good steps along the way and tested skills and tested behaviours, then I reckon you know. So extending probation, I think you just put them on a performance process. I don't think it doesn't really work in the Fair Work world that much. You can, but yeah, it's a bit wishy-washy. If you're a small business under 15, you have, so the thing is, when I say technically you've got 12 months, someone can leave at any time. I don't know if you know this as employers, and they can feel like they've been treated unfairly. And remember, you've got unfair dismissal, but you've also got a whole heap of other general protection side of things, entitlements, sick leave, all those kind of things that people can raise with Fair Work. But if they've been left and they've left and they felt it's unfair, they can just ring them, make a claim, pay their money. I'm speaking as a business owner now, and have someone hear what they've got to say. That will take you to a discussion with them anyway. So it doesn't matter whether you've got 6 months, 3 months, or whatever in the mix, that will come into play down the track, but they'll still be able to be heard regardless. So we've got to get this right up front wherever possible in the first, say, 6 months possible. I hope that helps, Oren.
It does, thanks. And if no one else has a question, I have another one, but I'll let other people ask questions.
Anyone else got any questions?
Keep rolling.
All right, thanks, Nerida. Thanks, Anna. So with working from home, and I mean, we're past COVID now, of course, but a lot of people are still working from home, and it's becoming the new normal that people will be allowed to work from home.
They want to,
Particularly the tight labour market, the power is more with the employees. Particular implications, again, around this very topic with less oversight or direct oversight because people are working from home more.
Yeah.
About that?
Oh, look, I take it all the way back to measures. Someone's role has to be able to be measured by them and by you as the business owner. And so that measurement has to be tangible in some way. So, I mean, you've got the work ethic side. So again, you've got the employ people for work ethic, but then you've just got to measure somehow. Not all roles are easy to measure. But I do tend to have faith in people, and I think most people would want to do the right thing, working from home, even without that oversight, maybe that physical oversight. But if you've got really good position descriptions and you're checking in with people regularly and you're feeding back to them and you're talking to them about where they're meeting the expectations, where they're not, then I think you can manage it. A good flexible working policy is good too. One of the things with flexible working, just quickly, is you're the business. If you don't think it's right for the business, or you can explain why it's better for someone to be part of, coming into the office, and all that's up for negotiation. So if you put a flexible working, or you arrange something with someone, you have a clause in your policy to review, definitely every 12 months, and consider whether or not it's working for them and for you. You can pull back on that at any point. It's not carved in stone. The only time it can be a little different to that is they come in with a flexible working arrangement from the outset. So they come in part-time. You can't then go, well, this job's now changed to full-time. You can't do that. But you can, those that are sort of trying work from home and a combination of different things, you can definitely discuss constantly and change things up if you need to.
Just an extension, Anna, of what Oren was talking about as well, because I'm looking at Oren, who I think does a lot of training, and even Mark, and even ourselves, when we bring people on, we don't always see what they're doing, in the respect that they might be client facing, but we may not be there all the time. How long do you think you should be watching what they're doing very closely and being beside them, if you like, to make sure you can hear the conversation and you're comfortable with what they're doing before you back away and then say, okay, over to you? So
this is a new person, for example?
Yeah, a new person. So you might have someone that you employ. If you take it in your world for an auditor, you could have an auditor. I know Business Depot don't do auditing, but you could have an accountant sitting out at a client place, and technically they're doing all the right things, but they might not be saying quite the right thing to the client, but you're not actually physically there. So is there a period of time that you think you should buddy up with that person and have someone next to them, or you've got any tips for that kind of stuff?
I mean, there's no silver bullet. I mean, I think it depends on the person, really. And I don't think you should have a policy around it. But I also think you could, like, for example, with flexible working, one of the things we do is you don't have, if you come into, we love the team being in the office for that very reason, Nerida. They pick up on things, they hear things, we hear them. Not everybody's client facing, so those roles are all different. We do want you to be in around the office for a period of time, 3 months, 6 months, whatever you think's reasonable, so we can all help you get it right. And you don't have to we don't offer flexible working from the day one, unless it is negotiated, as I said, through part-time. So, or you're talking about even not being in the office, right, as well. So I just think I don't have a definitive answer on that, but I think it depends on the role and depends on the person. Because you think about it, if someone's really nailing it, then you can probably let them off let them loose a bit earlier. So I think you've probably got to go, look, it's somewhere between this and this, and we're going to see how you go. And these are the milestones we want you to hit. We have a check-in, and we check in on this. We get some feedback from others, maybe get feedback on the client from the client on how they're progressing, and then you can kind of make a call from there. More information, the better.
Yeah. Any other questions?
So just if I can't see everybody's face because I know people are hiding. I'd love to hide my face too. If anyone thinks that they'd like a few bits of information, so if you're under 15 employees, which you won't all be, the Fair Work Ombudsman's website has actually been renewed in recent times, in the last 12 months. It's actually not bad to navigate. And you can search through for templates on performance management, and they will give you really step-by-step wording. Because one of the things with final letters, final termination, is you got to really put a lot of detail in there for that person. You've got to demonstrate that you've had these discussions along the way, because that letter is what goes straight to the Fair Work in their application. And so if it shows that you have actually made steps, that will really help your case. And usually just don't freak out about Fair Work, because the whole point of Fair Work is to mediate. They want people employed, right? I've said a few times. So you get into a Fair Work conciliation, whoever's the conciliator wants to mediate. They want to solve the problem for you. They want to work it out. They want to make sure that everyone's happy. They do go hard on you if you've broken some rules, and they will lecture you. But the whole point is to close it out there and then. They don't want you to go to court. They don't want you to fight this stuff. So most of these things can be sorted out. But we want to do it before that, because it costs you time and money. So we definitely don't want to spend time and money on it.
Mark's put his hand up, so it looks like he's got a question.
Hey, Mark.
Oh, hi, just a quick one. I'm just probably about to take on my first employee, and for me, it's going to be spending a considerable amount of investment into that employee, like some training and taking on certificates before I can actually take them on. How's the best way to address that type of scenario where I suppose you have to make sure that selection's correct and a good selection, but that they don't leave with all the training and then go on somewhere else?
Yeah, well, it depends on what the certificates and things are, but you can, if you're providing training for them to be certified to do their job, like accountants, we pay for their CA. For their CA training, but we also have a clause in their contract or a policy around training and repayment. So you can actually, within 12 months, within whatever, you can actually claw that back if you've got a policy around it. Have it from the outset, though.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, we do this. We do the same whenever anyone engages in any training the whole way through. When they're with us, not just that first 12 months, we get them to sign off that they understand that they'll repay that training if they leave within 12 months. So it's not just at the start, it's the whole way through. Yeah,
absolutely.
Which is really good.
Policy, absolutely, Nerida, you're right. Yeah, definitely. But get it from the outset for sure, Mark, and it'll be fine. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Just hire well, mate. Fingers crossed. Cool. Oh, so that's it. If nobody else has any questions, we'll be putting the webinar out, the recording anyway, so you can revisit it. Anna's also available. Her details will be in the blog that we put out with it as well. So if you've got anything else, just reach out. She's a great expertise to have on hand, and we will let everybody get back to their days. Yeah, thank you, Anna. Thanks, guys. It was quick, but hopefully it was a little bit helpful. Yep, definitely. Thank you, everyone. Bye. Bye.